Hello, found footage fans, and welcome to We Found a Tape. Join us as we hit play and uncover what lies beyond the tape.
Welcome everyone to another episode of We Found a Tape. Today we're going to be talking about an oldie but a goodie. We're going to be talking about The Last Broadcast.
Hell yeah.
This one, you know what, dude? I haven't seen this one in so long. I saw it post Blair Witch. I probably saw it a couple years ago, and I remember enjoying it. So I saw it today again, so it's like fresh in my brain. And you know what? It's like a slow burn, right? Because it's very like documentary oriented, because that's what it is basically, right? It's like a documentary, a guy that's doing on these murders, and like it started getting to, that this was going to lead into nothing, like, it was going to end the way it was going to end, and it took that sideways turn, and it just like brought new life to the whole thing. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, this was before, technically filmed before Blair Witch. It also came out just before Blair Witch and didn't quite catch the same tailwind in terms of success that the Blair Witch had, but
Right.
I think it really helped bring forward that found footage style that we really know and appreciate now. It's definitely one of those forefathers or godfathers of early found footage. In my opinion, anyway. I really enjoyed this one. I was excited when you brought it up recently. That's what kind of made me think of it. I'm like, damn, we really should do Last Broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's only proper that it gets an early review before we start going down the rabbit hole of more obscure things that aren't really heard of. It deserves its place out there. But I really enjoyed when I came back to it, the nostalgia, the AOL noises, the dial-up, the old Windows format of the Windows. When they're up, you're doing like anything as far as browsers on the computer. It was very old. No cell phones. You're out in the woods. You can't just call somebody out there. I mean, unless you got a walkie-talkie that's got long range, great. Or a radio like that that's long range. But that was a time that cell phones were just barely becoming a thing before they started booming, and we started seeing people regularly with cell phones. So yeah.
And another cool thing throughout this film is the fact that they make mention of the IRC chat, which was like it's a text-based service that was available at the time, and people would like go in these chat rooms and they would type into it, and they had like the creepy voice that would read out the answer. Like this was very early like AI type thing where it was transferring information and it was quickly taking it and then giving it to you through the medium of that voice, right? Now we see it with like the AI voiceover things for a lot of the brain rot YouTube videos and stuff. But yeah, that was kind of cutting edge at the time, and how insane is it to think of that was cutting edge in 1997, 1998.
Yeah, man. Those are the days of like the AOL chat rooms, and that's how we used to communicate with people and interact with people around the world. I was a pimp daddy in the AOL chat rooms back in the day. Pimp daddy day.
Yeah, I remember my first AOL username, and it was Y2 John Will. Like it was based on Y2J Chris Jericho, and then my first name and then part of my middle name.
Wow.
So it was Y2 John Will.
I can remember two that I used then. It was So DX was very big at the time. So mine was DX underscore 666.
Hell
And
yeah.
then that was about the time that I started, middle school ish into high school. So I was in band. So, and I had Ferret. So it was Drum and Ferret. It's a very weird fucking name. But, anyways, yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hell yeah. Yeah, and you totally had it right in the head with the nostalgia. I thought it was really nostalgic. It's great revisiting some of these older ones, especially when they have things like the tech at the time or the scenery at the time. Like, oh, it's just so good. And
It really gives it that authentic feel. I
yeah,
mean, it's I wouldn't say like time travel, but being at the time that they made it, everything was more, accurate, usable, as opposed to a lot of the newer ones that are shot like on phones that have higher quality and things like that. But there are some movies that are more modern out there that have used old cameras that way, and it really gives them that gritty video style. So yeah,
hell yeah.
absolutely.
And before we jump into the synopsis and start talking about the movie, I do have a couple of really cool facts that I think are really great to get off the bat with, especially on the topic of like that nostalgic type of media back then. So this film was shot. The last broadcast was made by Stefan Avalos and Lance Wheeler, and they made this movie. They shot it for $900. And I mean, at the time, that's probably quite a bit. It's probably a bit. It's still a micro budget, but this was considered to be the first like digital film that was released as a feature film. It was entirely shot, edited, and screened digitally, so there was no film involved. It wasn't shot like in Blair Witch. They shoot on that big camera that shoots on film, shoots on tape, right? So this was the first movie that was technically made with no film involved. So it's the first digital feature film, which is pretty
Interesting.
good.
Yeah, interesting. It's turn of the technology era right there, as far
Hell
as
yeah.
media goes.
Yeah, and it's really baked into the story, and I love that. I love that they leaned into it. Kind of, it's similar in the way that the Blair Witch leaned into it. This was more from a technical standpoint. The premiere was released digitally to cinemas across the US through satellite, and was shown using a Texas Instruments DLP digital cinema projector. So it needed its own projector to be able to process the movie and show it in the theaters when it premiered, which is that's a lot. And but yeah, leaning heavily into the technology at the time, what was available, what they were trying to do, and try and move it forward. I really dug that throughout the film.
I really, it took me back to with the Fact or Fiction. They're a ghost, paranormal type show, but they gave it that feeling of public access channels where people would have their own shows on there. That's what it reminded me of, the public access channel we used to have back in the day.
Yeah, and that's really what it was. Like, it's two guys who go by the name of Stephen and
Locus.
Locus. Yeah, I wrote Locus, but I joined the C too much, so it looked like Lewis for a second. I was like, no, it's Locus. Which are, and another thing about the film itself is they use variations of their own name. So Stefan Avalos, he plays Stephen Avcast, and then Locus Wheeler is Lance Wheeler. And I just thought that was just a fun way to integrate themselves into the character.
Can we stop for a minute and just take appreciation to the fact that for once the name was so unique that I actually remember the fucking name?
That is true. That's quite a rare instance, because
I wrote it down because I never write down names, and that's why I never remember names. And this time I took your advice. I wrote the names down, and look at there we go. Progress.
Funny because I wrote it down as well, but my handwriting was so badly, like at that moment, it looked like a completely different name. But one thing I didn't write down poorly was the synopsis. If you want to hear.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's hit him with that synopsis, man.
Okay. The last broadcast from 1998. On the pursuit of stardom, a group from a public access cable show meet their demise while streaming their hunt for the Jersey Devil. Fact or fiction?
Fiction?
Yes, this is all fiction. Spoiler alert. Not as much as it likes to give off that it is fact and real events, it is a work of fiction. But it was a very well done work of fiction, in my opinion. I had a really good time revisiting this.
Yeah, man. This was it. Like I said in the beginning, it was a very slow burn, and I'm not a fan of documentaries, right? So it's especially those crime ones, and this was very much like a crime-driven documentary. And I was like, fuck me. I was drinking a soda, I was vaping, I was doing all kinds of. I had a fidget spinner, and I was fucking with it, trying to stay awake for this. And I stuck with it. I didn't fall asleep or anything, but we were getting to the point where they had already convicted the guy, and I thought this was the end of the movie. I was like, well, I remember there being just a bit more. Then it takes the turn. He died in prison, and then that's where the whole turn takes. But it's yeah, man, it's just once it ramped up there and it took that turn, that's where it really picked up for me. But all this stuff, all the things that make me fall asleep were crucial to this. So I mean, it was still important that I paid attention. Good. Because you need all this information for the end. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, no, that's good. And it's definitely a slow burn. So we also brought this up when we interviewed James Ersted, who made What Happened to Susie. Is I get a lot of the last broadcast from that movie. It's that slow burn, right. The stylization of it being like a documentary. This one in particular, last broadcast, and when I was looking it up, this was an influence. But those sort of crime shows called like FBI Files. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was an influence for this. So it's filmed in that same vein where there's dramatizations and there's news articles and things like that are shown up to like talk about the crimes that had happened, and to help bring credibility and an entertainment value to it. One thing that does, and I'm amazed that you didn't fall asleep, is this guy has such a low, deep voice.
Yes.
Very monotone.
Very monotone.
So that could be also quite difficult to keep concentration on, because he'll put you to sleep.
But to be fair, I mean, although it was very monotone, it was a creepy monotone. So like whenever he spoke out of nowhere, it kind of like, whoa, tell me more.
Yeah, and that's where the influence from like FBI Files and like the detectives, the new detectives or whatever it's called, those, they have a sort of monotone, but there's a pitch to it that sort of piques your interest. It's an interesting voice he has, and it's great. But yeah, just if you're getting ready for bed and you want to watch the last broadcast and pay attention, don't do it. This is a good one to have like mid-evening or during the day on a Sunday is a good time to watch the last broadcast. Just to kind of ramps you down, chills you out. I thought it was great. I loved revisiting again. It's cool because Lance, who plays Locus, he follows us on Instagram.
Oh,
so,
nice.
I made sure to tag him. He liked our stuff, so big shout out to him. And we're excited to dive into this film.
Yeah, absolutely. So this movie was it starts out with the whole 911 call, right? So it's the guy that they hired, the psychic, that's talking. He's stating that he was out at the Pine Barrens. He got separated from all the people that he went down there with. He made it back to the vehicle. They're not there. He had to hitchhike 5 or 10 miles down the road, and he made it to a payphone. Going back again to the old stuff, there's no cell phones out there, so you got to hitchhike your way to a phone. or to the nearest, um, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like hint of civilization, just to make a phone call.
Oh yeah.
And he called 911, so that was the whole recording of his call. And then it kind of goes into the movie, right? It starts introducing everybody. Locus and Steve have the show Fact or Fiction, and this was to be about the Jersey Devil, this episode. But they had this bright idea that they were going to live stream it, something that had not really been done, when it comes to shows like this, like out in the field. Usually it's a recorded show, you'd air it, you edit it, do whatever. They were going to do this right as they go along, air it as it goes, and just whatever happens. It's like, for the first time, them doing an actual show live. So that's kind of where we started.
Yeah, and again, it's the technology at the time. What they were ultimately trying to do is they were trying to do the first simulcast, is what they would call it. So they were simultaneously broadcasting to the public access network that they were with, that they do the show Fact or Fiction for, and they were also trying to broadcast it through the internet for people, like to try and hit a larger audience, and ultimately to try and do the first ever simulcast that's ever been done at that point in time. Other than things like news broadcasts and stuff like that, but that's not like a full episode of a show. It's broken up into different segments. It's a professional team. This is
Right.
you gotta get a ragtag group together in order to try and put this thing on. And
This is a budget simulcast.
yeah, for sure. And you start to hear a bit more about Fact or Fiction at that starting point. You hear that there was sort of cracks forming within the main who are running it. Stephen and Locus are having, they're at wit's end with each other, and that's when they decide to do this broadcast and put it out there on simulcast in order to really reinvent the show. To try and put it through to that next level and try and get that. I think the way that they portray it is that Stephen was the one that was like, oh, this is gonna like really make us rich and famous, and that's kind of, as soon as you start to do things for that purpose, then that's when you start to come into issues with it, right? Because you're doing it really for all the wrong reasons. You're cut. That's where you'll cut corners and you'll try and do things in a way that's maybe not as safe or logical in order to try and pursue that, and that really ultimately ends up being their downfall.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we progress on, we're seeing the formation of the group that's going to go out there, right? So it's the two guys, it's Locus and Steven, and then they meet up with God damn it, the other two guys, I didn't write their name down. Was it Sam was the psychic?
Jim Seward. Jim
Seward.
And Rain Clacken.
Rain Clacken.
Whose real name is Rain Clabbers. So it doesn't.
Oh, really, interesting. It's not that far off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, Rain Clacken. Rain Clacken's the sound guy who is there to try and materialize and make things work in terms of getting everything all set up to broadcast. He was like the sound engineer, like the paranormal guy, and really it's quite funny because it's like the early days of like I guess like Craigslist or an area where you would find like classifieds, and really they found these people. One, Jim Seward is a psychic who claims to be a psychic, who is going to help lead them to find the Jersey Devil and find their location to help find the perfect spot to broadcast, which is red flag number 1. And then Rain he ends up catching, the way that they find him is because he catches audio of a paranormal activity happening, and he shows it to them, and they're like, whoa, yeah, this guy's legit. Red flag number 2. They're going on people based on their paranormal or parapsychology ideologies. There's no real fact or fiction. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of what they kind of gambled with that a little bit, and yeah, I found it to be quite an interesting way for them to try and do it. I guess to make it a bit more wild and crazy.
Yeah, and Jim really played the psychic part really well. So there was little things, right, that he could, sense things, and he was really insistent on, yeah, I can do this. You need me to find this, and I can do this for you. Let me do this for you. And these guys were desperate for somebody, so I mean, actually, they took it. Although they were a little reserved about it because they don't know nothing about this guy,
Totally.
and he just seems a little bit off. But they started testing him a little bit. They started doing the card trick, and magicians can do card tricks like this where they can act as a psychic and count cards and know the order of the cards. Could have been his deck, for all you know. So I mean, he could have known the order of the cards, and he's calling them out. So he is beginning to show other sides of himself, like aggressive sides. So there was this part where he freaked out a bit. They had to hold him down. There was this whole like not like a paranormal glitch, but the movement of the camera, because they were trying to hold him and film at the same time what was going on. This guy was having like a psychic episode where he was trying to like pull in information, and he asked for ashes. So they set something on fire. I guess it was a piece of paper or something, and he grabbed the ashes and rubbed it on his arm, and it had a date, which is the date they were going out there. So that was his way of saying, this is the date we need to go out there. This is the day, we can broadcast. Everything's going to fall into place this day. So that was another, I guess you could call that a red flag, because, just kind of weird that the numbers are burned into your skin. You needed ashes to fucking, whatever, it's tricks of the trade, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this documentary is going on, and they're talking about, because these guys disappeared, and Jim was the only one that came back, made the 911 call. So now police have gone out there, they've looked, they found bodies. They found 2 bodies, but mind you, 4 of them went out there. So they found 2 bodies. And now they've pinned this on Jim, because now they've gotten a search warrant for his house, gone into the house, and just found the pile of clothes that he wore that day months down the road, still on the floor, just sitting there with the blood splatter. They identified 3 different blood types that matched the victims, which were the other 3 guys that were out there. So, that was enough to put him in court, get him indicted, things like that. So the trial process is going on. This is kind of where we're at so far.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting in terms of the structure of this, because at the start, that's where it really hones in on the fact or fiction crew and sort of gives a detailed account of them, who they were, what they were trying to do, what they wanted to do, and really tell you about them as people. And then in that middle part is when it starts to turn to Jim, and that's where it's profiled, or Jim's put in a light that he was ultimately guilty of these murders. And what I found quite interesting is it starts to go into the evidence that they found, the clothes that were in the place. What they did is they reviewed the videotapes that were captured of them meeting Jim for the first time and him doing all his magic tricks, which he was obsessed with magic. And it was interesting because they basically used the magic trick against them, because they put that the magic trick with the ashes of the date, like that, to them showed premeditation, which I thought was wild. Like they must have had like a very thin case for this, but they also point out, and I think this is another reason why it ended up going through the way that it did, which is just a horrible way of thinking of it, but there was like an election in the town at that point, so like whoever was governor or was running for election like wanted an open shut case, because this was getting big news in the town. So they end up getting like a open shut case, and this guy goes down for it. They have enough circumstantial evidence to really pin it all on him. So, and then the final third of the movie is really when they find this new evidence, this new videotape that
Right.
that I think it's David. David is the filmmaker who's actually doing this whole documentary. He hires a videotape analyst or a specialist in order to try and reconstruct the damaged videotape. I don't remember where they found it or if this was how he came into contact with it, but
So what happened was, so he got a life sentence for each murder. They only found 2 bodies. They never found the third guy. So when they found the 2 bodies, he got 2 life sentences to be served consecutively. So he went into jail, started doing his time, and then fast forward through the documentary a little bit, turns out that he was mysteriously killed or died in jail. So once he died in jail, immediately after that had happened, and the director of the documentary, David, caught wind of his death, he received an anonymous box at his doorstep. And once they opened it up, that's where they were showing the video segment where they open it up. It had the what are those things called? The peanuts, the foam inside the box. But it was the tape, the actual tape from within the VHS that was all open and just scattered everywhere within the box.
right.
So that's where they had to take it to the videographer, video designer, whoever the lady was, and she had to kind of pull them out, find segments, piece them together, and things like that. So that's kind of where the video part came from. So this was post death of Jim in jail.
Yes. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. I didn't put it in my notes. I just remember he does come across the videotape, which, as we come to the end, like really, that's where we find it the most interesting. But the video expert is Michelle, I think Shelley is what she also goes by. She's a video expert using, again, also cutting edge technology in order to basically, and again, I also wrote this down. This is like another early instance of AI type material where she's running the videotape through this machine that digitizes all of the footage, and then what she does is she runs a program and she basically tells it to fill in the gaps that were missing. So they're basically using the coding of the video and they're basically filling in so that they can clearly see what was on the videotape, which is mad. When you really think about it, like in 1998, that people would have been like, this is insane. Now it's like we have AI apps that do that in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it could even fill it in and put in like stuff to fill it when it doesn't even need that information out. AI has progressed so much, man.
Yeah.
It's scary, AI, the way it is today. All those TikTok videos of AI, I don't know if you've ever seen the ones that I send you of Roman Reigns, where he's like freaking out in a store at a McDonald's drive-through. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's crazy.
Can I get an Oreo McFlurry? I'm sorry, sir, the machine is broken. What the fuck? And he just starts fucking freaking out, and you can clearly tell. I mean, it's not him, of course, because why would Roman Reigns do that? But the voice is different. But AI is always adjusting and things like that. But it's funny to see how AI is progressing now. It can imitate people. It can even down to the body stuff. Like it can like make picture perfect of things. Like you see, if you were to go to like places like the porn websites, I mean, there's even AI porn on there that is like so close. It's like you can pretty much see the person naked that you've never seen before, and it's like so accurate. It's scary, dude. Like how it's progressing so much. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that is scary. But yeah, this was kind of more so along the lines of that early use of that digital technology in order for it to do that. Because it was going to take, I think they said it could take days, maybe weeks for them to like finally like go through all the footage and process it and then digitize it and then do all the filling in of the gaps. Like that was wild. And a good portion of that final third is really where you learn more about the rift between them. It starts to show, because they end up having an argument with Jim and Rain. Rain makes a comment, and they show it like 5 different times, which is really just, again, it's to try and highlight the fact that Jim was, the perceived guy who did all of this. And he's like, "Are you a psychic or a psycho?"
And that's where you see him freak out in the woods and runs away. "I'll see you at camp," and he just like runs away like a child. That was funny. I laughed at that part. I was like, "What is this dude doing?"
Yeah. And and as we start to finally get to see all that footage that comes through from that tape, they find that there was 2 different cameras being used. One was from Locus, who's it's the main one, and the other one was from Rain. And that's when it starts to piece together more information about the actual events that happened, and ultimately it disproves Jim being the one who killed Locus and Steven and Rain. The time that and it's interesting because the way in which they talk about one of them says the time, they like check their watch, like, "Oh, it's so and so 2:30," and in the police report or the trial or whatever, they basically had said that so and so had died at this time, but that with this piece of evidence, it proved that Jim was still around or at that time, and he was still at the camp, and he couldn't have done that. Like, it basically disproved everything, and the fact that he died in prison, like, he couldn't be remanded for it. He couldn't be disproven or set free. So it really starts to push home that light, and we hear David, he's like, "Yeah, I'm convinced 100% that Jim Seward didn't commit these crimes."
That's crazy, man. And it really doesn't go into detail. I kind of wish that it had. I mean, I'm sure it had its reasons within the movie, but the cause of Jim's death.
Yeah.
Like, was he poisoned? Did he die of, depression? Did he kill himself? What the issue was. But
yeah, I think it's
one of those mysteries.
Yeah, I think it's just there's the fact that he was dead. One thing I also wish they could have done as well is that maybe done like a prison interview with Jim Pryor, and like something to allude to the fact that or as we know in the end, like, knowing that David is the one who is the documentary filmmaker, him going to meet and interview Jim Seward and having him have a visible reaction could have helped really segment that end, really, in the way that it just reinforces it. Basically, it's clear, it's obvious in the way that it happens, that ultimately David is the filmmaker, is the one who did it. He was the one that that said in the IRC chat, "You should do an episode on the Jersey Devil or the Pine Barrens. You should do an episode on the Pine Barrens."
Yeah, that was a twist that turned from us. Like, wait a minute, this guy is doing the documentary, and like, he started this whole thing to create all this.
Yeah, it's just a sick form of entertainment, realistically, for him.
Right.
And he knows the whole time. Like, I guess he just wanted to be a filmmaker, and he ended up just going through and making all of this very elaborate way to relive his crimes, basically, is what I took from it. But what really stood out to me was when we get to that end and we see the final few pixels forming on the screen for Michelle, and it starts to show like a face, and then it like shows David's face, and he's just like, and then she like stops and she like gasps a little bit, and then she turns around, and then he just like lunges at her, and it takes a very interesting turn here, because as we know of found footage, like there's no everything is all in camera. There's never anything outside of that that's being used in this sort of technique. But ultimately, with that, they end up showing the final few minutes of the movie in a cinematic type way, where he ultimately fucking wraps her in plastic, suffocates her, ties her up in duct tape, like this fucking body, and he goes to dump it, and then he's got the camera still, and he's sort of introducing the fact that he's going to do the what's it called, the reconstruction of the scene of the crime, and showing you all that. It's just like this sick way for him to relive everything that's happened. It's how I took it anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was just kind of for his own entertainment. Maybe I've missed it, but we still never find out what happened to Kraken.
Yeah, well, so the two deaths that happen are Rain and Locust. Those are the two bodies that they find. It's Stephen that we don't know what happens to.
Stephen, that's the one that's missing.
And it's ultimately on that tape that they find, and they're going through like all the blood that was there. And I think one of the police officers, because they interview a bunch of people who are specialists in their field, old landlords, family friends, psychologists, everyone is sort of represented in this, which is really cool in the way that it's shot. But they basically deduced that the amount of blood that was identified as Stephen's blood, it was too much there for him to be considered alive. One of those type deals. So they end up saying that they couldn't convict him for 3, but they did 2. So he got 2 life sentences.
Right.
So
I did fall asleep during part of the movie.
Yeah. But no, it was a rather brutal end to the film, and he really fucking attacks her. He does the whole Evil Dead type through the woods and all that, and then runs up to her and ends up. And I can't remember why they had so much plastic everywhere either. They just were setting up all this fucking plastic. I guess it came with all the wrap from the machines or whatever. I don't know, but they had a lot of plastic going on right there.
Maybe that's how you made tents in the 90s.
Yeah,
plastic.
But yeah, it was an insane twist. I first time seeing this, I didn't see it coming. It threw me off guard, the cinematic nature of it. But I give it a pass, because at this time, 1998, there wasn't a term found footage. There wasn't explicit, rules to follow. It was really after the Blair Witch that's when those types of tropes and ideologies started to come through and really hone in and really shape found footage going forward. So I think because this was one of those earlier ones, they were able to sort of still get away with it, and I definitely applaud them for it. This is one of the iconic found footage movies that you'll see. It's right before the Blair Witch, which is for many considered to be one of the greatest of all time. So coming out around then, and even the slightest delay that would have put this movie out, you never know, it could have really taken off, or it would have been detrimental to it. So I think it came out probably around the right time, and now it gets a really cult classic status. It's the sort of it's the higher class version of Blair Witch in a way, where it's got a more technological, rather than they're film students in Blair Witch. This, they're beyond that. Yeah,
TV show.
They have a syndicate, or not a syndicated, but they have a public access cable show that they do. It's set in '96, so it's running about the same time period as.
This was the YouTube of the '90s.
Right, yeah. This was definitely that. One major influence that I've actually heard a few people mention. There's a really great documentary on Shudder called The Found Footage Phenomenon, which Locus or Laz Wheeler is a guest on the show, and he has a great interview and he talks about the influences. And a few people mention this one. It's called David Holtzman's Diary, and it's from 1967. And that film is ultimately like another very early found footage. It's based on like a video diary of this guy who just films himself, and then he's ultimately obsessed with this woman. So he starts to, stalk and do all that sort of stuff. So that's where they were very influenced by that. Creep was influenced by the same film, and likely the last broadcast was a definite influence on the likes of Creep as well.
Yeah, man, good stuff. Good backstory. Yeah, the found footage phenomenon documentary on Shudder is a really good one. If you ever get a chance to watch it, I highly recommend it. Stayed awake for the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
it's a topic that I'm interested in. So I mean, obviously, I'd watch the whole thing through. But they touch on a lot of different parts, the history of it, and things like that. So definitely worth a watch if you're a found footage fan, if you've not seen it already.
hell yeah, yeah. I got a really cool Blu-ray of it when I was out shopping at Vinegar Syndrome. Another thing I wanted to show off is for fans of physical media. I own a VHS copy of the last broadcast, which is one of only a few found footage movies I actually have on VHS. The other one being Blair Witch Project, obviously. But yeah, this is the only copy I have of this film. I need to find it on like DVD or like. There's a really cool Blu-ray release of it, which I'm quite excited to try and find.
Nice. Yeah, that would be cool to have in the collection. I started going out and collecting a few found footage movies myself, so every time that I go out, and now I'm on the hunt for them.
Hell yeah. I'm always on the hunt for them, man. Always. Anytime I go out and look, I always look for Area 51. That's the main one I usually look for. We've been very lucky in the last little bit where we found some really cool found footage movies. One we found randomly at like a convention, I think, was a movie called Hooked Up. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
But it's about these two guys who they basically take a trip to Barcelona and they meet this girl or these girls, and one of them takes her back to like this old creepy like mansion that she lives at. And yeah, it's just absolutely wild. It didn't hold out much hope for it because it has a really dumb looking cover. It was actually really, really, really good. So on one of our underrated gems, be sure to keep an eye out for that. That's definitely one on there.
Word. Well, I think it's about that time that we go ahead and rate it. You want to do the honors?
Hell yeah. Yeah, I it's just definitely a slow burn. I will always preface that we mentioned it a good bit at the start of this. This is a slow burn. So if that's not really your bag and you're looking for non-stop action, I think maybe sit this one out until you're in a mood for something that is more so along the lines of a slow burn, chilled out type vibe. I am a huge fan of like FBI files and forensic files and those types of documentary style programs, crime shows. So this was right up my alley. I had a great time revisiting it. It had been a few years since I'd seen it, probably. I'd say probably about 2 years since I'd seen it. And yeah, for me, it still holds up. It's that nostalgic nature with the tech at the time, which I always think is really fun to go and revisit because it really brings back those memories, which is always fun. I loved Locus was my favorite character. I like Locus. Steven is a bit more uptight and kind of like, but Locus is a bit more like kind of chilled out and seems like a really cool guy. So he was definitely my favorite. But yeah, overall story wise, it does start to take a bit of a lull towards that middle to the final third. Is kind of where it starts to go a little bit off kilter for me. I think I would have wished it to sort of move along a little bit there, but really, realistically, at the end of the day, it's no big deal. Overall, enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. It's incredibly underrated, and it's definitely worth a watch. For me, it's a 4 out of 5 tapes.
Very good, sir. And I think we're both in agreement at 4 out of 5 tapes.
Yeah.
You're very correct on the slow burn part. Me, not so much a fan of, crime documentaries. They always put me to sleep. But there are, the couple of found footage that I've seen that are like that I powered through and are able to watch them. Last broadcast, What Happened to Susie. There's a couple other ones out there. Poughkeepsie Tapes is another one kind of like that. Where it's kind of a slow burn like that. But overall, I mean, the movie was good. I mean, it had a good twist to it at the end and things like that. Never saw the director of the documentary, being the guy that orchestrated the whole thing. I think my favorite character was Jim, just because he is a con artist and he is entertaining until he starts fucking freaking out. Then at that point, he needs to go home. So, I mean, he's only entertaining. He's not entertaining anymore. But yeah, overall, I would say 4 tapes as well. It belongs up there at a higher rating just because it was one of the first found footages that came out, found footage style movies. It was before Blair Witch, so it definitely deserves its place up there. Not so much maybe one of the founding fathers, because it wasn't as widely known as Blair Witch at the time, but it's definitely, has caught the attention of people now later in life that can appreciate it more. And that goes with a lot of movies, right? So outside of found footage, I mean, action, horror, sci-fi, there's so many movies out there that bombed at the box office or never made it to, anything as far as theaters. It was just a streaming on demand or straight to DVD. And for years, nobody really talked about it. And it just took the right group or right amount of people to see it years down the line, and it becomes a cult classic and it becomes popular and people revisit it and appreciate it more. There's those movies that they come out at the wrong time, but later in life are found at the right time, and they make that impression. They are enjoyed at the right time that they're supposed to be enjoyed. So although a film doesn't do great at the box office or in sales initially when it comes out, later on in life it will be more appreciated, and that's the destiny for that film, in my opinion, because it came out at the wrong time. That's the way that I can see it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie. It just came out at the wrong time, and people weren't appreciating it or seeing it for what it was at the time, and it took years for other things to come out for you to go back and revisit this and be able to say, hey, this is pretty cool, and it becomes a popular thing amongst groups of people or certain watchers.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. It definitely holds like a cult classic status. It got a really cool release. I think it's 101 Films is the one that put it out, and I think that's such a great thing, especially nowadays, because a lot of people are revisiting the 90s and 90s era and 90s aesthetic, whether that's VHS video recordings, looking for digital cameras, the style Jenkos, fucking like the media, like everyone, a lot more people are starting to get physical media again, which is cool. And with that comes these sometimes boutique labels, sometimes just labels in general, who like to revisit some of these older films and put out these really great versions of them that include so much additional stuff, whether that's new interviews, and really bring new life to a film that many people may have forgotten about or hadn't ever seen, just because for a lot of people they'd stop at Blair Witch and everything prior to that, which there wasn't that much. There probably was still, you wouldn't categorize it at the time as found footage because no one knew what the hell that was. And that's why the interesting nature of that documentary, that found footage phenomenon, is really, really good. It really goes into that history of found footage. It talks about like the McPherson tape. The McPherson tape is pre Last Broadcast, and that's really made out of necessity because the guy had no budget or very little budget in order to make it, and he made like a home video style alien encounter movie is kind of what they ended up going with. And that's considered to be also like the godfather of found footage as well. Like that predates Blair Witch, predates Last Broadcast. I think it came out like early 90s. So that's also another one that for a lot of people is up there on the list. It's another early one. It's after, David Holtzman's Diary or fucking Cannibal Holocaust and all that. Another one that people like to associate with is like the first stylized version of found footage was Peeping Tom. I don't know if you've ever
I've heard of that one.
Yeah,
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, there's moments of that where it's sort of through a camera lens and there's like found footage elements to it. That's where a lot of people associate with that. But I've heard a few say about David Holtzman's Diary, and I think it's one I'm going to try and look out for. Another one is Man Bites Dog, which came out in 92, and it's Belgian, and it's another hugely influential movie where it's about a documentary crew that they film this serial killer, and they end up getting to the point where they start to participate. So they're more of accomplices rather than unwitting, camera people. So that's one I'm on the lookout. That's my other one. That's a Criterion one. So that's definitely on my list to see for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to check that one out.
Hell yeah, we should try and think of like a classic one and try and review that. And I think that would be very cinephile of us.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to visit one of those earlier found footage movies and talk about those.
Yeah, I think we should make a poll or something.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be pretty cool. Put it out on Instagram. Pick 2 or 3 of them and just kind of see where everybody's feeling.
Hell yeah.
Kind of make that in the next episode or 2.
Hell yeah, that's fun.
So everybody be on the lookout for a poll.
A poll. But yeah, that's good. 4 out of 5. I think is a solid score. Found footage is such a hit or miss genre that like even if you give something a 3 or a 2, you could still find good quality to it. That's still a good score. Really,
Yeah.
The only way that a found footage movie is bad is if it's a half a star or like a burning tape or 1 star. Even there could be some elements that you like, but I think 4 out of 5 is fantastic for this one. I really enjoyed it. And I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the Last Broadcast. I know we had someone reach out. His name's Neil Fraser. He's a graphic designer. He had done some work, I believe, on the release of the Last Broadcast, like the artwork.
The colored one.
Yeah, I
Where
believe
it's like bright colors. Okay, the Blu-ray copy
so.
has that.
Yeah, I may be mistaken, but he's definitely done other found footage works. His one for Host was phenomenal. I think you have one of his I think it's the Blair Witch, the graphic that you won in that contest.
Oh, the poster.
Yeah, I think that's his
Okay.
poster.
Nice.
Hell yeah. So so he said that this was one of his first found footage movies that he ever saw. He rented it when he was a kid. His mum rented it. So it's always great to visit people's first or favorites, and we'd love to hear what your favorites are and what your thoughts are on the Last Broadcast.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. It's been great talking to everyone. John, you want to let them know where they can find us?
Absolutely. If you want to listen to the podcast, if you want to watch us, it's going to be on Spotify, on YouTube, on Amazon, on Apple Podcasts, and we're also on Instagram, all at We Found a Tape.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. And always remember, be kind and rewind.